On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, how did the Oklahoma City Thunder handle the draft? What will happen as free agency opens tonight? And are the Thunder being aggressive enough?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and SI Thunder beat writer Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO Thunderpod. Joining me today, as promised, Nick Crain at Crain NBA on Twitter, Uncontested Podcast, SI Thunder, and everywhere you find basketball content, including Draft Digest, as we are about to talk about the draft. Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm a man of my word. Last time I was on the show, I said between now and free agency, we will jump on. So when I got the text from you last night, it was a no-brainer. We just had to find the right time, and here we are.
Here we are. What a time to be alive, as free agency is soon to tip off at 5 p.m. local time. So this is going to be our free agency preview and draft recap and everything else. Nick, working backwards to the draft, the Thunder walk away with 3 selections after entering the draft with only 1 pick. They walk with Nikola Topic, with Dillon Jones, and Ajay Mitchell. What did you think working from 12 about the Topic selection? Just give us a download on Topic and kind of how you view that value-wise with a team that's kind of balancing, still shooting for win now, in pieces, and also with upside.
Yeah, I think it's a long-term move, obviously. Topic will not play this upcoming season. Expected to have ACL surgery, miss the entire year. But I think when you're a really good team that wants to contend for a long time, like I'm not going to use the word dynasty yet because you got to win something to be a dynasty. But if you want to set yourself up to be a dynasty, you have to think about like a 5-year championship window. And that window has to move each year. Like if you believe that you're a contender today and can be for the next 5 years based on your contracts and your players, with each consecutive season, you also need to make these sneaky moves where your window continues to bounce, where that 5 years in the future continues to be 5 years instead of going 4, 3, 2, and then you're sucked into the small window. So Topic feels like a move, and to like talk about him as a prospect. Serbian guard, 6'7", incredible IQ, great playmaker, great passer, projects to be a decent shooter in my mind. Like the comparisons to Josh Giddey, I get to a degree. If you go back and watch Josh's film, not to like say that he's a better or worse prospect than Josh, but Josh, the jumper was always like that this looks non-fluid. Can he become a good shooter? Topic, though he was just above 30% from 3 last season, has like a smooth release, a quick release. You could see it coming around, right? He's more Micic-like, I think, than Josh-like. So you think about these guards and what they can do. His jumper, I believe in. So I think he's a long-term move. He's not going to play this season. I know Thunder fans are kind of upset about that. You don't get a win now guy, but he's the youngest guy to go in the first round. I think he's the second youngest in the draft of guys that got drafted. So it's like this delayed sense of satisfaction. A year from now, Rylan, when we're talking about the next free agency and summer leagues coming up, and we're talking about Nikola Topic coming in at 19, he'll be 19 then. A year from that, he'll be 19 years old going to summer league next year. I just think it's going to be one of those like, man, what a great move by Sam. It's hard today because you want to see somebody tangibly help the team. But from all indications I got talking to scouts and teams, pre-injury, everybody thought he was going like 4 or 5. When San Antonio even got 4 in the lottery, it was still uncertain, the situation with his knee. Didn't know he was going to be a redshirt at that time. There were still conversations about him going 4 to San Antonio. So in a move that you can continue to push your 5-year window and get a guy that's a top 4 talent in this class and just have to be patient and wait a year, I think it's a solid pick. Is it the funnest pick? No. But is it the best pick at 12? Probably.
Yeah, I think that you look at that and you have to kind of look at the whole picture. Number one, it would have been tough. As much as I love Jared McCain and Devin Carter, and Dalton Connect to an extent. Like, I like those guys a lot. I've written about those guys a lot. It would have been tough still to find the playing time for those guys right away, even for as good as they are. And I think that they're ready to compete for their respective rosters right away. But on this roster, with this rotation that's already 10 deep, it would have been tough to get them minutes anyway. Although I think that they could have done it. With Topic, what you're looking at is, like you said, if it hits, then that's just incredible. Like, if he hits his ceiling, that's an awesome selection. I do think he's a better prospect than Josh Giddey was, just because of the shot indicators and because of where he's at, even for his age, where he's at compared to where Josh was. And we just saw that, like, you could not have scripted a worse season for Josh Giddey at all. Like, there's nothing you could have added in that would have made that season worse. And his trade value was still Alex Caruso, who is a fit like a glove, incredible piece for this Thunder team. So, could Topic have anything happen to him worse than what Josh Giddey just did, and you were still able to recoup that value? I don't think so. So, like, this is a move that it could be for the future where, like, he's on the court and on the Thunder, number one. It also could be to trade where the Thunder are not a team that has found free agency success, as we're going to talk about coming up, and that their only real avenues for bolstering this roster, especially once you pay your core, is via the trade, and Topic is really good for that. And then Topic also comes into a much different environment. Not only is he a better prospect in terms of his shot indicators and everything else, but the situation is not going to change on him. Like, Josh's situation changed every single year. Topic understands exactly what he's walking into, exactly what's going to be asked of him, and exactly how to execute that. And the Thunder thought that they figured out a way to leverage Josh Giddey's skills heading into this fourth year before Josh did not want to come off the bench. So they clearly have an idea of how to use this archetype to its fullest extent, that they want to see executed. They want to see what it looks like. And so Topic gives them that chance on top of the other luxuries. My biggest thing with this pick is that the only way it matters is a positive. Let's just say that he sucks and he's awful, and this is a terrible pick. Who really cares? You have $1 billion first-round picks. You have $1 billion chances to get out of jail free on this selection. And I just keep coming back to, it can't be worse than this last year of Josh Giddey, who had stuff happen to him, off the floor, played off the floor in the playoffs, and still you were able to capitalize on his value. You're going to be able to do that with Topic as well.
Yeah, the reality is Topic, in a worst case, like, they do the ACL surgery, his knee still is not right, and he never plays basketball. Like, worse, like, not going to happen. Worst case scenario. That doesn't, in my opinion, at all hinder the Thunder's ability to be a contender for a long, long time. Right? It's gravy is what it is.
And on the flip side, if he becomes a top 5 talent in this draft, then you've got the best of both worlds, where you can either use that to parlay into a trade in a position of need, or use it to strengthen your roster with a cost-controlled talent that you're going to need as you quickly pay some of these young guys that you're going to need to do. Now, Dillon Jones was a bit of a surprise on the surface of here's a guy that many people did not have mocked in the first round. Few people did, but clearly the Thunder felt like they had to go get into the first round to go get him. There's been anecdotes revealed that the Celtics had worked him out a lot and that they might have been the team targeting him. What do you make of Dillon Jones? What do you make of Jones as a first rounder, just his game in general?
Yeah, he's very, very unorthodox. Like, a tough eval because of it too. And that's why I think a team like the Thunder drafting him tells you a lot. One of the best in the league. We talked about this on the last pod that I was on with you pre-draft, of like, any guy this team takes, almost like they've missed, just like every scouting department has. But when they take a guy that you feel is like a reach, Jalen Williams, for example, you just have to trust it, right? What makes him a hard eval is because he is like the ultimate tweener, where he's the size of a guard at 6'5", 6'6", but the build of like a short forward, where he's got the 6'11" wingspan. And he's very, very sturdy. Second best defensive rebound rating in college basketball last season. It's like a dominant rebounder. So if you saw his statistical profile on a rebounding standpoint, you'd think he's a 7-footer. If you looked at his statistical profile as a passer, you'd think he's a point guard, and he played a lot on ball. He's just this weird archetype that like doesn't exist a lot in the NBA. Like I've made a comparison, not to say he will be this guy. They look very different on the court, but statistically, when looking at what they do production wise, it's a lot of Josh Hart, where it's like this guy's that small and rebounds that well and impacts winning that much. And those are the kind of guys that you almost like, we think of unicorns as like the Porzingis, the Chet, and the Wemby, these 7+ foot guys. Like there can also be unicorns in role player situations where, because you can't picture how he fits, people view it as a bad thing. But maybe it could be like he does all these things and we don't have these kind of guys in the league very often, which makes him special, which I think is why Oklahoma City liked him, on top of the fact that if anybody tuned in to the rookie presser, he's just a phenomenal human being. And I'll let you provide some context there too, Rylan, but great guy. Oklahoma City's looked at him for multiple years now. And the fact that he doesn't have many comps and you can't really picture how he fits in the league because he's so unique, I view as a good thing, because that just means you got a guy that's hard to find versus just like I love Trey Mann, but you can get 6 Trey Manns in every draft, right? It's just not a unique player. And Dillon Jones is super unique in a great way.
So I agree that Dillon Jones is exciting. I think that, partly because when you look at Jones and his unorthodox nature, it does seamlessly fit with what the Thunder are trying to do and building this unorthodox team. And there just seems to be this synergy between Jones and the Thunder, who've targeted him for multiple years. The way that Jones describes Sam Presti, the way that Jones would look at Sam Presti whenever questions were asked at the big podium forum level, it just seems to be like they get each other and they get it. And the fact that like Dillon Jones was the guy at Weber State and he was the man, and he's a first-round pick. He bet on himself and he won. And he doesn't even give himself 2 days of being the man before he just comes in and says, yeah, I know I'm going to be a guy here. Like, I'm not going to be the guy. I'm not going to be like the number 1, number 2, number 3. Like, I know I'm just going to be a guy. And like acknowledges that like the time spent being the man actually translates into him knowing how to be just a guy. Like, I think that perspective is really important to have for a young player heading into the NBA, especially on this team, because that lets you maximize your opportunity, and an opportunity that I think he'll get. Like, we know how adventurous that Mark will be. We know that he doesn't like look at your raw age or experience column and just say, well, that means you can't play this year. Sorry. Like, they're not going to just hide him away like the Pacers do with Therese Walker or where Carlisle and any other team does with rookies. I think he'll play right away, and they'll evaluate him as a starting point of like, hey, you're going to get a ton of preseason minutes, some minutes early on in October. And if you need to go to the G League, that's no problem. If not, and you need to write it out like Kaysen did, then that's awesome as well. So like, it's really exciting to kind of see how this will all fit together, because, him playing off ball more, he only was the beneficiary of screens and roll 12 times. Getting that more into his game and shooting more off the screen as a roller or as a popper with his shot, like, I think that will unlock something for him, especially being in the form of just a guy. And then you can maybe blend in like some on-ball stuff in the secondary unit. There's just so many ways to use him that if you believe like Sam Presti does, that he's going to be a solid NBA defender and he can scale up and be a part of something, which I think he could more so than what his film might indicate, because he's going to be surrounded now by a top-tier NBA defense and athletes, then it gets really exciting for like what he could do in year one.
Yeah, something I want to call out. I talked to a couple scouts about Dillon, just like their perspective on him. And the thing that stuck out, and I heard multiple times, was at Weber State, Dillon was the guy. If you haven't watched Weber State, he was the guy. He shouldered a significant load on offense, which is tiring. He also is in a situation where they cannot afford for him to get in foul trouble or worse, foul out. A lot of people believe, smart people that evaluate the draft believe, in a lesser role where he's not shouldering the offensive load and he doesn't have to worry about not fouling out. And there's, you can see it on film. There's plays where it's like, oh, he just didn't want to foul there. Like, he probably could have cut the guy off, or he just can't get in foul trouble. There's reason to believe he can be much better defensively at the NBA level in his role than he was at Weber State.
So I would totally agree with those and just see how this all unfolds as a rookie. Coming up, let's talk AJ Mitchell and let's talk free agency as we get closer to the start of free agency. But first one's here right now. But our good friends over at FanDuel, check out FanDuel because we all love sports, but they're not happening right now. We never want them to stop, but the playoffs are done. And, the football season's long over. And now it's just Major League Baseball where you can go and bet on MLB. But you can also continue to check out FanDuel all summer long because FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost and bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long, from Major League Baseball to everything else that they have to offer at FanDuel.com/lockedon. So go start making the most of your summer over there, where FanDuel is the official sports partner of Major League Baseball. If you only like the NBA and only want to bet on the NBA, they still have stuff for you to bet on, including MVP odds, where SGA is third in MVP odds, only trailing Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic. You can maybe bet on him to win the MVP. They still have Bronny James bets. Will Bronny James score 20-plus points in any 2024-2025 regular season game? If yes, it's a plus 1,100. Nick, do you think that he will or won't score over 20 points?
I think it would take 16 shots. So I'm going to take the no, which would not be good betting odds. So don't take that. Have fun. Get on there and bet Bronny James over 20 points. You have nothing to lose. Put 20 on it.
Yeah, put a little 5 spot on it if you're so inclined at FanDuel.com/lockdown. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. Subscribe for free across all podcasting platforms, including on YouTube. Nick Crain joining us, Uncontested Pod, SI Thunder, Draft Digest at Crain NBA. AJ Mitchell, seemingly going to be on a 2-way contract, but you watch how he can score at all 3 levels so he can get to the free throw line and kind of some of the defensive upside that there is there, especially with this organization, with this developmental staff. Is AJ Mitchell the next in line to go from a 2-way contract to a standard contract and be a very cost controlled, very valuable guy?
I think he's got a good chance. For a lot of the season, he was a first round grade by a lot of people. Ultimately slips to the second round, goes 38 to the Thunder. And I think it's important to conceptually realize what the Thunder did to get him. It was Lindy Waters for 52 in cash to get to 40 in cash to get to 38. So just like we talked about Topic, where it's like, if it works, great. If not, oh well. We can look back on this. AJ Mitchell, let's say he never plays NBA minutes. You give up Lindy Waters and cash. It's all good. It's gravy once again. But I do think he is talented enough and has a skill set that he could absolutely be converted to a full-time contract this season and be the next guy in line to do so. Good size, a smooth score, operates well in the pick and roll, facilitates, like he has lead guard skills, but he also, like, when you look at his scoring off the ball, I asked this in the rookie presser yesterday, and he gave a great answer. I think he's got upside as an off-ball guy too, like a spot-up shooter in limited minutes. I think there's a role for him in the NBA. He's super mature. I just think that he has the right mindset, again, just like Dillon, the right mindset and the right approach, that whether he ends up being a full-time NBA guy this season or down the road, he's the kind of guy that you bet on to be a guard that one day, if a consolidation trade happens, let's say Lou Dort or Kayston Wallace or both, or Isaiah Joe is traded in a big deal for like a big or a 4 or a wing, he's the kind of guy that you could bring up, and like he could be in a 13th man spot in 2 years and you feel great about him at pick 38, right? Or conversely, he doesn't work out and you give up Lindy Waters and cash, and Lindy Waters wouldn't get me on the team in 2 years anyways. It's a no-brainer, low risk, high reward move by Sam Presti. And although he took a third, I don't want to say he took 3 guards, because Dillon Jones, I don't think he's going to be a guard in the NBA. I think he's going to be a wing. Although they took 3 ball handlers in the draft, and you could argue they didn't need that. It's okay because 1, the roster changes quickly, and 2, what they got AJ Mitchell for was basically nothing.
Yeah, it was literally nothing. I mean, I think that the storybook for Lindy was already over in Oklahoma City. It was a great fairy tale, but like the reality is they had to make business decisions to maximize their roster, and he was just not someone worth bringing back because you know what Lindy Waters is. He's a theoretical shooter who's really improved defensively, but this is a team that wants to maintain their flexibility. And how does AJ Mitchell over Lindy Waters maintain flexibility? As you mentioned, the trade deadline. Like if you send out 3 guys for one at the deadline, that immediately you go from way too many guards to now you're lacking depth. And AJ Mitchell has a way better chance of being ready to contribute at a high NBA level at the deadline than Lindy Waters does, because Lindy Waters is just not going to get there. Like, it's a great story. He's an amazing human being. He's not going to reach the heights that AJ Mitchell can reach. The potential is no longer there. Hopefully, he has a great career with the Golden State Warriors. Hopefully, he goes there and can fill a role for them. But I think that the Thunder were ready to move forward without him, as it was evident that they were, because they traded him for the 52nd overall pick and were likely to decline his option. But AJ Mitchell, I think what's unique about him is that while he's a 4-year college guy, his background goes deeper than that because of his upbringing in Belgium, where he's played so many different styles of basketball. And I asked him about how at college he didn't really do guard-to-guard screens and do some of the stuff that the Thunder do, but he actually mentioned that in his upbringing, he did a lot of that.
We didn't use that much in college. I think for me, growing up, we used to do that back home in Belgium, so kind of used to it. But I think it'll be a fun adjustment for me, just playing a different role, different way. So it'll be pretty cool.
As a player, to come to a team like this that relies so much on versatility, is that exciting for you, or is that kind of a different challenge?
No, I think it's exciting for me, especially. I feel like my game's pretty complete, so just getting better at everything I do will really help me. But I'm really excited to be part of this team.
It's going to be exciting to see how AJ Mitchell kind of fits in, and I can't wait to see, of course, what he does with the blue. Now, so far, Nick Crain, no deals have happened because free agency is not yet open. However, it opens in mere hours. Have the Thunder been aggressive enough to this point to prepare themselves for this win now opportunity? We'll review the offseason to this point and preview what's next for Oklahoma City. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Nick Crain, the 2024 NBA draft recap. We've gotten through all 3 prospects. Now it's offseason time. So far, the Thunder have swapped Giddey for Caruso, which it cannot be, oversold how much of a win that is for Oklahoma City, how much that really improves their roster. This is a 57-win team. And I saw some concern that maybe the Thunder, haven't established themselves yet. And look at the Kings, who had a huge uptick in wins and then went right back down. This Thunder team is way more positioned to avoid regression than any team that could be a flash in the pan. Like this team, do you really expect Shea to not be a top 5 guy? Do you really expect Jadab and Chet not to take another step? Do you really expect Case and Wallace to not produce? Do you really expect the things that have to happen to get the Thunder to not repeat their performance is way too long for it all to come together. It's never going to be as good as you think it is or as bad as you think it is. They might not win 57 games again, because 57 wins and above is an ungodly number, but they are going to be a top 6 team. They are going to be a home court advantage team, and you move forward from there in the West. That's kind of all you can ask for. This is a team that's a 57-win team that won their first playoff series since 2016, that took the Mavericks to 6 games with a 0-point differential, who went on to win the Western Conference, and they traded in their worst player production-wise, who got put off the floor and who didn't fit their style, for one of the very, very, very best fits for what the Thunder try to do. So they've already done that. And I think that because that happened 2 weeks ago, it gets forgotten about. They've already done that. Then they added this draft class, which, if you don't think that it's inspiring for a win-now team, I can't really push back on that. And now they head into the offseason. And the free agency opens up, and that's whenever trades also happen. They have top 5 in the league cap space. They've declined the option on Wiggins and Joe with the intent to re-sign them both to long-term deals. One, do you believe the Thunder have been aggressive enough or aim to be aggressive enough? And just what do you make of the idea that people are freaking out right now about all of this?
Yeah. The Caruso trade, this is going to be disliked by the fan base. I think that in itself, if nothing else happens, is enough to be excited for next season, to be better next season, right? for all the reasons you mentioned, Josh was not the guy in the playoffs. Caruso, I don't think this is a hot take. You put Caruso in for Giddey last playoff series, given the Thunder were a corner 3 foul away from going to a game 7 with the Mavericks. Not that they would have beat the Mavericks in that game 7, but I think if you put Caruso out there and you give him all of Giddey and Gordon Hayward's minutes, I think they're going to the Western Conference Finals. I also want to call out for next season, just to set the stage, Oklahoma City winning 57 wins should not be the barometer, right? If they win 55, that doesn't mean they're a worse team. They could actually be a better team. Regular season wins do not indicate fully if you improved or not. So just want to call that out. I think because of that, all that to say, the Caruso deal is significant enough that I think if they did nothing else, they were aggressive enough to take a step forward. Maybe it wasn't the leap that the fan base wants. I also think that this is a team that the trade deadline could be really interesting for them. Like, you see what this team looks like with Caruso the first couple months of the season, and then you really analyze what you need. Like, Sam's very tactful. He always says, like, you don't buy paint for the house before you've bought it and seen it. Like, there's a reason to believe you shouldn't maybe make a huge splash this summer. All that said, I think they will continue to be aggressive. I think they will make another halfway significant acquisition. I don't know if it'll be free agency. It may be more of a trade. I think this team historically, if you look at the 3 biggest free agent moves they've ever made, Derek Fisher on the buyout market, Patrick Patterson 2017, I think it was free agency, and Nerlens Noel 2018 free agency. That's the bar, folks. Like, in the almost 2 decades this team has been here, that's their free agent signings. I think it's partially team philosophy, organizational philosophy. It's partially like you're Oklahoma City, you're a small market. So to think that they make a big splash in free agency, they absolutely could. I'm not putting my money on it. I think they will likely improve the roster more outside of the Alex Caruso trade via another trade. That's my take on their aggressiveness and like how they're going to approach the rest of the offseason.
And I'm glad you pointed out the trade deadline, because fans are sick and tired of hearing about like the time, because like the last couple of years has been all big picture oriented. But even for a win now team, it's still big picture oriented in the sense of, look at the Dallas Mavericks last year, who rushed into some moves of like, let's go get Grant Williams. Let's go improve this roster. And they still had to pivot at the deadline. And without that trade deadline and without the masterclass that Nico Harrison pulled off at the deadline, the Mavericks are not in the NBA Finals at all. Like, the 2 biggest parts of their finals runs, especially PJ Washington, like, you're not there without PJ Washington.
Yep.
You're just not. And so even for a team that was aggressive and felt like the clock was ticking on Luka and Kyrie, and they missed the playoffs and they tanked down the end, they still had to pivot at the trade deadline after making moves to get Omax and Rashawn Holmes, after trading for Derek Lively, after signing Grant Williams. So for any team, the deadline is huge, especially nowadays, where right now, this moment in time, find me the Western Conference team that just says, all right, forget it. We're not even going to try. With the play-in tournament where 10 teams make it, everyone's trying.
Yep.
In February, that picture becomes more clear, especially with a good draft. I mean, you can speak to the 25 draft class. Like, it's really, really talented. Unreal. So you get a team that's middling at like a 10 to 11, or in the play-in tournament with aging rosters, you're going to say, screw it, let's just go get Cooper Flagg or whoever else. And
if Cam Johnson's not traded this summer, believe he will be traded at the deadline. Believe that. Exactly. The Nets want to be as bad as possible.
You get a clear picture of all this stuff.
Yeah.
Once you get to the deadline. So I know that there's a little bit more time to wait, but the bottom line is this team's good enough to rip off wins out the wazoo from October till February, from October till April. So they're really looking at how to improve the roster from April to June. And that comes with time. That comes with being measured of look at what just happened. The Thunder entered this offseason with top 5 in the league cap space. They made a 1-for-1 swap and took on $2 million more than they gave out, and they're hard capped.
Yep.
Like, this new CBA, people don't understand it, as evident by people like thinking that the offseason was over yesterday as soon as they declined the options. People don't understand it fully. And I think that you'll be shocked why teams are being so calm and not giving out Timothy Mozgov stupid deals and like being reserved. It's because of how much you are penalized for doing anything. Even a 1-for-1 swap of your worst player for Alex Caruso you get penalized.
Yep.
So I think that they have to be measured. And like you mentioned, this team's never signed free agents before. And there's too many reports out there. For example, whenever, if Hartenstein picks somewhere else or goes back to New York, there's too many reports out there that think the Thunder just didn't check in on Hartenstein. They've obviously checked in on Hartenstein. It's coming from reputable people. You know what they can't do, though? They can't pull Hartenstein's wrist, slam it on a table, put a pin in it, and force him to sign his signature. They can't make him leave New York. They can't make his supermodel wife in New York not want to be a model in New York and come model for Brahms billboards. They have to actually, get the agreements from both sides.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
not
think that
the
they're being
Thunder's
aggressive
Thunder's history of free agency or lack thereof is not because they don't try to bring in big names. It's a two-sided coin.
It is a two-sided coin. Now there are some coins that the Thunder could grab this summer realistically. And I think that you've really got to take a step back. If you're freaking out right now in the comments because we're rereading them, we're seeing them, it's exhausting. And realize that if I told you that they signed Jalen Smith in 2 hours from now, and that would make you calm down, that would make you think everything's perfect. You got to really, really reevaluate why you're so furious right now.
Yeah.
If all it's going to take is a Jalen Smith 2-year deal.
Yep. Same with the draft. Likely at 12. Assuming and not assuming, this is what happened. Klingon and Edey were both off the board. You had Ware, you had Holmes, you had Bona. You had a couple guys that were interesting. You wouldn't maybe take any of those guys at 12. You may move back. Those guys probably weren't going to fix the Thunder's front court rotation. I think Derek Lively being so dang good last year has poisoned the mind of NBA fans of just take a first round center and he'll end up being the third most impactful player on a finals team. That's not something that you can hang your hat on happening. So draft aside, free agency aside, there's not, assuming Hartenstein signs elsewhere, the draft and the free agent market are likely not going to be your answer in the front court. So you've already freaked out about the draft. You shouldn't. You may freak out about free agency. You shouldn't. There's more options to improve the roster, and it's likely going to be via trade, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you look at Brooklyn of Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, some of these names that would easily be grabbable. Is there any free agent that jumps out to you? I don't think that the Hartenstein stuff, we'll see if it happens. Obviously, the Paul George thing is trending towards Philadelphia at this current moment in time. Yeah. Clay seems to be trending toward Dallas as of the latest reporting from Mark Stein, where they're somehow going to have Clay and DJJ come in this offseason with Quentin Grimes. But is there anyone that jumps out to you as you could really realistically see both sides kind of coming to terms?
Jalen Smith is the cleanest, in my opinion. We won't talk about him because that's the obvious one. I'm going to give you a name that I've brought up in multiple forums over the past week, and I've been grilled for bringing it up, but I want to explain myself when I say it. Tobias Harris. He is a big body. He's a guy that can score when needed to. I think he's a guy that at this point in his career would be open to taking more of a back seat. Philadelphia, he was asked to be the third guy a lot. He would not be that in Oklahoma City. I think he's been sour in the minds of NBA fans and NBA Twitter because of his contract. And I don't know what, to be honest, he's a weird one. If he signed for the MLE, I wouldn't be shocked. If he signed at 20 mil for 2 years, I wouldn't be shocked. If he signed a really small deal, I also wouldn't be shocked. I don't know what his value is. But if Oklahoma City could get him for the MLE or for, 14 mil for 2 seasons, I just think that is one of those scenarios where you look at the playoffs, they struggled at what you thought Gordon Hayward could be is get you a bucket when you need it, but when you don't need it, he can play off ball and space the floor and hit spot up shots. For the right price, I like Tobias Harris. For more than the right price, I hate the idea of Tobias Harris. But I think that he's a name that people dislike because he's been attached to his contract for so long. But when you remove his contract, he's actually an interesting piece.
Yeah, it's a very delicate line to walk because if he was on a team-friendly deal, people would have zero ill will toward Tobias Harris, even in the mean streets of Philadelphia. And he would blend into what the Thunder are trying to do. Ball legend too. Cannot forget that. That's a huge plus for him. Ball for life. Scottie Hopson might have laid the foundation for this move. But I do like Tobias Harris. It's an interesting one that people aren't talking about, but is eyebrow raising. I'll give you an eyebrow raising one. Then I want to get to one that you pitched off the air that I want to bring on the air. Tyus Jones. Like, if you don't believe that Dillon Jones is going to be a guard in the NBA, which I don't either, and it's tough to bank on AJ Mitchell like instantly impacting the Thunder.
Yeah.
Just as a two-way guy, I think that he's going to have a successful NBA career, but it's tough right now. I still think that the Thunder could use some additional table setting, some additional playmaking, and they're going to try to make Chet a better playmaker. They're going to try to put Taysom into a situation as a better playmaker. And we'll see how that works out. Caruso has some playmaking ability. Like Tyus Jones, they just orchestrate the second unit. I would be curious to see if that would be interesting. I know that people would freak out because he's a guard, but
I think it'd be a great move. Again, for all the names we're going to talk about at the right price, it should just be like the asterisk. Like, that's always going to be the asterisk. He is the kind of guy that everywhere he's been, you look at his advanced numbers and on-off numbers, like, he just impacts winning, and he does the right things, and he's gritty, and he plays on both ends. I think he'd be a phenomenal fit in Oklahoma City. I wonder what it takes to bring a guy like him in. That's always the question. But in a vacuum, I think that's a phenomenal name, and I think that's a name that I've not heard, but we probably should be talking about, because I think you're right. Kaysen has the upside to be a primary like point guard off the bench, but in the world that he's not ready or just not that guy in general, it'd be good to have a guy like Jones.
It's a good insurance policy. Speaking of the guard thing, before we get to your name, that I think will blow people's socks off.
Yeah.
In my days of broadcasting Division II college basketball, there was a specific team, Arkansas Fort Smith, which I'm surprised didn't lure away Isaiah Joe and Jay Will from the Razorbacks. And they would always come to Lawton, Oklahoma, and they would give the roster out to the play-by-play broadcaster, which would be myself. Award-winning, by the way, no big deal. And you look at the roster, and the position column would be B's all down the board. B, 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 B for basketball player. Now, granted, when I look at the height column, and one guy's 7'1" and the other guy's 6'1", I kind of figure who's going to be what position. But as just an ode to how annoying the fan base is whenever you bring up guards, it'd be funny if they just listed everybody as a guard. List Chet as a guard. List Isaiah Hartenstein as a guard if you sign him. Just list everybody as a guard.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, like,
lean into it.
The fan base is so against guards, but then they also praise the team for being so good at small ball when they play four guards and a big. It's like, if you're going to play four guards a bunch, maybe you need a lot of guards, like that actually makes sense when you think about it.
Amen. Now, the name you brought up, I'm going to let you defend.
You make me say it?
I'll say the name. I'll say the name, but I want you to defend it.
Okay.
Because I think it is an interesting thought exercise that is gonna freak people out. Like, they're gonna start typing this comments in the YouTube comments before we even finish the sentence.
Yep.
Jonas
Valanciunas. Okay, so this is an idea I've had for a bit. An idea that many people don't like, and I think it's an idea that may be dead, because when LeBron came out and said he would take less for a player on the MLE, and Jonas is on that list, I don't know if I'd pay Jonas MLE money. But assuming you get him for cheaper than the MLE, yes, he was played off the floor in the Pelicans series. Yes, he doesn't fit Oklahoma City's style of 5-out. Yes, there's a lot of reasons he doesn't fit what this team does, but this team's at a point where they've proven they can win in the regular season. And I almost think every move you make has to have the playoffs in mind. And against the Mavericks, for example, it would have been nice to have a guy like Jonas that could come in and like muck things up. Even if he's not playing a huge role, just like go in and match Gafford's minutes, right? And have Chet match Lively's, like, just to give you the extra wrinkle or like the tool in the toolbox. I don't care if you pay him $10 million a year and he averages 11 minutes a game in the regular season. Just to have the option to throw him out there in the playoffs. Every playoff series is so different. So different. Even if you play the Timberwolves, like, I think you'd like to have a Jonas out there because Rudy Gobert is not spacing the floor. that would be a good guy to have. Even if you don't give him the ball, he takes 4 shots a game. Just have a big body in there to bang with the 2 7-footers in Minnesota. I don't love him as a player, but I think he's a nice wrinkle to have for the playoffs at the right price. And I don't know if you can get him at that price. I know that Thunder fans hate it because they just saw him get played off the floor in the Thunder series, because the Thunder is a team that he doesn't work well against. But there's other teams that they'll face in the playoffs that he would work well against. So I think he's an interesting name to at least think about.
I think he's an interesting name almost regardless of contract. And now hear me out. Obviously, don't give him a max contract. But the Thunder are in they're in this unique position where they can thread this financial needle of paying a guy. Maybe you pay him too much, because let's face it, like, Oklahoma City is not going to sign a non-Thunder player to a bargain bin contract.
Yeah.
You have to overcompensate for being in a small market, for being a destination that no one wants to go to. You're going to have to overcompensate for that.
Yep.
And so, whenever you look at, Jonas Valanciunas, this would be a move that you have the luxury of paying for him, paying the MLE. Let's use that figure, paying the MLE for him, and then you have everything covered. Yeah. If a team goes small, tries to play him off the floor, there is no better team designed for small ball than the Thunder. Absolutely no better team. If a team tries to go big and really mess with you, that's perfect. They've played into the hands of Valanciunas.
Yeah.
And the Thunder would be able to maximize him, whereas, like, all the Pelicans could do to maximize him was dump the ball in the post and see what happens. They're bunting the ball down the line in baseball, as I've always said about Valanciunas the last 2 years before the playoffs and postseason. The Thunder would not have to use him that way. The Thunder would be silly to use him that way. They have guys who can generate their own offense, and they have guys who can utilize him as would he be the best screen setter that Shai's ever played with in Oklahoma City? I mean, like, in a contending capacity, like, as one of the better screen setters, as one of the better rollers for Shai and J-Dub, that'd be huge.
A team, mind you, that thrives getting downhill and getting to the rim has done so without a great screener.
Yeah, exactly. And if you need to just not play him, as the Pelicans didn't play him, who cares? Like, you have the luxury of the money to burn for the 2 years, and you then would stylistically match up with everybody. Who stylistically could mess over the Thunder? At that point,
nobody.
You've
got both.
And then he falls off the bucket 3, pay Shai and Chet and J-Dub, and it's over.
Yeah. It's intriguing.
Hannah Montana, best of both worlds.
Love it.
Nick, this has been a lot of fun. We both expect Wiggins and Joe to be back for team-friendly deals, obviously, and long-term packs. It does not in the offseason. And a good catch by Crain. Even if they re-sign him, quote unquote, re-sign them at 501, and like the tweets are announced and they're re-signed, those tweets don't mean anything. In the sense of, the Thunder can wait to send these contracts to the league and officially make it official until they use the cap space still. So whenever you see the tweets, if it's at 501, people are going to freak out. Shams, Woj, whoever is not God. Like, that's not when it happens. the order of operations, the PEMDAS of signings is what truly matters. I'll tell you when it's official is whenever you see the Thunder's press release. So when the press release happens, if that happens at 501 or 502 or whatever, then yes, it's over. But until that press release is sent out, it's not over. And these are just reported figures and reported options that we don't know what the chain of action is until we do. So that's just a little tidbit for you, because we know that people are going to freak out at 501 should that happen. But Crain, thanks for joining us. Let them know they can find you and find all your stuff.
At Crain NBA, Draft Digest, Thunder on SI, Forbes, The Uncontested, as a guest on Locked On Thunder when I'm able to jump on is always a good time. So we've got Rylan 2.5 hours at the time of recording this. I'm sure you'll get this up quickly, but we are here. And then we get to the Summer League and then the dog days of summer in August. So enjoy the content while it's here.
Dog days of summer, which is alleviated a little bit as we all become Canadians. And
good call.
Shout out to the Olympics.
Yes.
Until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.